Harb meeting. And the first item on the agenda is 227 Lansdowne Ave. Who would like to speak?
Is this on? This is on. Yeah, okay. Good evening. I'm Jim Bradbury, and we're the architects for Gail Blower and Mitch Miller. Mitch is here tonight. Gail's out of town, who are building a new house on a subdivided property on Lansdowne. Also here is Garrett Schatzel from Cornell Homes, who's the builder. And what I'd like to do is just kind of take you through things, and you guys obviously ask for things that I don't provide or whatever. I think first of all, I just mentioned you guys got photographs, I guess, of the houses surrounding. So, I mean, it's a beautiful street, but it is kind of a mixed bag. There's, you know, some Victorians, there's some, federal, there's some 1980s not so nice houses, etc. But what Gail and Mitch wanted to do was clearly build something that's very much in the spirit of North and South Wayne. So the house that we're showing is in the spirit of kind of Queen Anne-ish. It's 2.5 stories. The lots, as you know, on that street are fairly long and narrowish. So the site plan, which is the drawing here on the podium, we're basically kind of pushing to the setback lines on the side yards and the front yard. We do have a front porch that does wrap partially on one side, as do many of the houses on the street, and we think is one of the great features of the houses in Wayne. We've tried to make the house, even though we're trying to get as much square footage as they can for the program, at the same time not just be kind of a big vanilla box. So we've tried to work in bays and roof pitches and dormers and a variety of materials and so forth to kind of break the scale of the house down and create something that, again, would be contextual with the street and the area. So you're seeing the site plan there. Driveway is along the south property line with a 2-car garage, 2.5-car garage sort of in the back of the property. And then the main living spaces on the front of the first floor, and then more private living spaces in the back of the first floor, and as you go up into the house. We will, once we get through you all and go to engineering and so forth, have an engineered site plan. I'd asked Beverly. We had a site plan that my office did, and we're pretty accurate. But obviously we'll be going through all that, and Shade Creek, Tree Commission, and so forth and so on. So that's basically the site plan. The elevations of the house, we've really only colored 2 of the elevations. The others, hopefully you can kind of use your imagination. I brought some materials today. The front elevation obviously is the primary street elevation. And not unlike Mitch and Gail's house now, which is next door, and it's in the packet there. I forget, 225, you guys? They're 225. In some ways, kind of a saddlebag to that, in the sense that they have a front porch that wraps the south side of theirs. We would have the front porch wrapping the north side with a lower monopitched roof. Some columns and obviously baluster work and so forth in the front, with some open beam work on the gable that's over the front door. The building is envisioned to be out of primarily 3 wall materials, and that would be James Hardie materials, 2 of them, which would be Hardie siding and Hardie shingles, which I think all you know is fiber cement siding. What we're proposing to use is a 6-inch flat lap siding and an 8-inch Hardie shingle. We probably would not want to use the pre-colored, although we got to work all that out in terms of budget and so forth. But if we have our druthers, we'd like to use a custom color palette. And then the third wall material would be either a real stucco or a synthetic stucco and ephes up on the gables. Again, not too dissimilar to Gail and Mitch's house currently. And then the roofs would be, at the moment, we're thinking of a staggered fiberglass shingle, like a GAF Timberline or Slate Line or something. I have some samples of those. And then the only other 2 products, other than the windows, and I'll come back, doors and windows, and I'll talk about that in a second, would be the base and the chimneys. And we're actually looking at synthetic stone for the base and a synthetic brick for the chimney. If I had stood here 15 years ago and proposed to use synthetic stone on a building, I would have, first of all, laughed myself out of the room. But they have come amazing distances with that material. And if I had to characterize, we don't have samples tonight, sorry, I would say that the base would be in the world of a mica schist, which is certainly a regional stone in this area. The brick would be fairly simple. I would like a darker sort of burgundy brick with not too much mottling to it. And we do have some corbelling on the chimney and so forth that we'd like to work into the design as well. And then finally, the trim on the exterior would be probably an AZAC type material, engineered material, which obviously is very low maintenance, paints up well, and would tend to last a long time, with some decorative features that might be fiberglass, like a FIPON. Do we bring? Yeah, like a FIPON material or an EDON or something like that. There's not a lot of this, but for instance, some of the rafter tails, for instance, it's a lot going to depend on how we detail the actual eaves and so forth. So those would be probably those materials, as would the columns, would probably be a fiberglass. And the columns itself, I'm a little back and forth on that. I think it's a fairly simple, I'd call it a Tuscan column without a plinth at the top of sorts. And the reality is, if you look at a lot of these houses from this time period, they were almost kind of naively classical when they used classical devices. So for instance, I was looking today when I knew we were coming at some of the catalogs, and I love real Tuscan and Doric columns that have curved entices and so forth and so on. But the reality is, when they were used in Queen Anne architecture last time, they didn't have a tapered, or they didn't have an entices. They may have been tapered. So I'd say the jury's out on that still, but it's going to be a very slender column. I know that for a fact, and that's kind of the effect we're trying to achieve. So I did give you all some paint colors, and George, I don't think you got it, but Cameron has some. And those are not the best, obviously, because they're scans. The palette that we're thinking of using, these are all Benjamin Moore historical colors, and we're looking for, some muted tones that are certainly from that period, and you certainly see on the street there. They happen to be all from the historic color collection in Benjamin Moore. They don't have to be necessarily. And I should just say this because Mitch told me Gail will kill me if I don't say it. If you've seen their house is painted beautifully, and I remember you guys tested a bunch of colors, as I recall. Right. So while I can't stand here today and tell you these are the colors, because she and Mitch are going to be very much involved in it, I can tell you it's going to look good, and they're going to want to make it right. So, but think of that palette. I think where the clapboard is perhaps one predominant color, the shingle is a second color, the ephes might be a slightly lighter green, play on the darker green, and then the trim in the windows at the moment anyway is sort of a cream color. But that, like I said, we would want to look at that. And I should just mention the doors and windows. We're looking at a Pella, probably Proline series, exterior clad, simulated divided light. Which would probably, again, match the trim, although I wouldn't say it has to necessarily. Certainly there's examples of darker window sashes and lighter trims and so forth and so on, but we do have a sample, and you guys. Thank you guys. Know these. And then the last piece I did mention, there may be Pella doors, but I think the front door would certainly want to be a more interesting door, whether we custom design it and have it millwork shop make it, or we find a really nice door from somewhere, or even find a salvage door for that matter. Am I forgetting anything from you guys' standpoint?
I just have a question.
Yep.
Anyone please join in. Is the surround and the mullions and muntins pretty close to the profile? Are you using that exact
we're proposing,
window?
well, our light pattern you can see is proposed to be a 12/1.
Right, I see that.
And the muntins, yeah, that's a 3/4. I would say probably, I would want to look at the scale of the windows, which we normally do when we blow it up and really think about it, to think what would be the most appropriate. And I'd probably, again, sort of crib from their house to some extent, but it's in that general world. The trim probably wants to be a flat, wider trim than maybe just a 2 3/8 inch brick mold. But again, I think we'll look at all that as we get a little bit further down the road. So.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think this is a really good example of infill architecture in a historic district. And the reason I say that is I think, first of all, the siting is really excellent, that it's within the setbacks of the rest of the houses. I think the fact that the garage is behind the house and not next to the house is really good, because you notice the house and you're not looking at the garage. I think the scale is very appropriate to the street and to the type of house that you're trying to emulate, and I think that the proportions are nice. So I just wanted to say that I think this is a really good example of infill architecture, and the fact that you're using materials that are not historic materials, it is new construction.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't, I don't think that's a problem at all.
Great, thank you.
I actually want to even take it a step further and say it's a great example of respecting, honoring the rhythm and design of the older homes, but using new technology. So it's a great match.
Well, and you guys are talking about the design, but it's, as an architect, it's only as good as the client, because I could have been up here trying to sell you on something that I had a client who wanted something a little more out there and a little more bombastic, and I would have had to try to make you think it was Victorian. Gail and Mitch clearly are they love this neighborhood, they love Wayne and what it's all about, so,
It's it's evident.
I have to agree too. I mean, it's when you look at the footprint, I mean, you can almost say from that alone that that it's in keeping with all of the kind of the Victorian ins and outs and bays and so forth. And the only thing that would have been different is that the garage would have been detached in the back.
Well, our existing home has a carriage house all the way to the top.
So again, it's a new house, new program, everything's connected, but it's in the back and it's appropriately sized. So I think it's a great job.
thank you.
This could be a textbook example, I think.
I think
When
so,
somebody wants to
too.
build new construction.
Yeah, I think
Terrific.
this is great.
Yeah, I'll ditto to it, all of those things. I think one of the things I liked is how you took the ideas of the existing house and actually improved upon some of the elements, especially the windows, and played off some of the other houses down the street. And there's been some really nice restorations middle of the block, and carrying those really nice color schemes plays along exactly with what they've done further down the street. So, good job.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Mhm.
Any public comments? Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness?
As-
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Great. Thanks very
Thanks,
much.
Jim.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is 205 Poplar Ave.
Good evening, folks. Gary Herron here for Mr. and Mrs. Hawk, 205 Poplar Avenue. My objective is to remove the existing porch, the front porch decking, and also the deteriorated floor joists, and to repair them, reinstall new pressure-treated floor joists, appropriate size to carry the flooring. The flooring will be an AZAC tongue and groove material, which will meet I believe, the historical needs of the home and really increase it rather than the 2x3s that are on there now. So bring it into good historical conformity. The AZAC material, again, as has been stated here just in the last folks, is new material, yet It's not so much affected by the weather. It's UV issues we have with light, the rain, the four seasons that we're involved in take a toll on a three-side open deck. So this material it's expensive, but it stands the time and will stand the test. And it will be in good conformity. It gives us a nice, clean look that ought to be there in a tongue and groove open porch. It's a very simple,
Just
it's
out
a
of-
very straightforward
Just out of
project.
curiosity, do you think
Yes,
the
ma'am.
floor that's existing now was a replacement?
Mrs. Hawk mentioned to me that the floor was replaced I'll say more than 25 years ago. It is a replacement, yes, ma'am.
That's
And
what's-
probably was probably a three-quarter fir painted tongue and groove porch.
The existing floor is pressure treated. That's what it looks like anyhow.
It is, I believe, sir. It's got a lot of wear to it,
Yeah.
being exposed like it is. It is. Yes, sir.
In terms of the column, you said that you're cutting away some of it and then replacing it.
The columns have some deterioration, as all wood outside in the weather, especially being exposed as it is. There are some areas of deterioration that have to be taken in consideration. So the very minimal that has to be taken off there. And some areas we're not going to be able to do that because we're going to do some patching. We'll do some extensive patching on that and repair. And I mean just easily removing some deterioration and rebuilding that to keep the conformity, keep the structure, keep the beautiful fluted column shape.
So will that be done in AZAC or in wood? But if you rebuild part of it?
The bases of the column now are 2x4s, and it looks like that had been cut down a little, as you see on that small double B area showing the blow up of the base of the column. We'll probably remove, to try to get all of it, to bring all of the columns into conformity so that it will have all of the exact same look. So not wanting to do that at all, especially on beautiful columns like this, which are just spectacular, but to bring everything into conformity and level and laying soundly on the new framing as well as on the deck surface, we think we need to do that. So we will probably use, it could be pressure treated, it could be AZAC, but AZAC, I would not use it in that case to put that kind of pressure on it. I would probably use pressure treated material. They could be covered, and we might cover them with, we might wrap them over with a vinyl covered coil or aluminum, just to overlay that so you get the water running away from the column base, trying to keep that from damage. But we've just got to see the least amount we can cut from those column bases. That's most important to us.
Now, you're taking the whole porch apart, all of the joists, all the decking, and starting over pretty much, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right. Is there a way that you can, when you put the porch back together, after you've investigated how much of the column you have to cut, is there a way to raise the porch to compensate for whatever instead of adding to the column base? Is your skirt board's going to be new? Are the steps masonry?
The steps are wooden, sir.
And are you
Steps
replacing them
are
as
wooden.
well?
I like to.
Okay.
I would like to.
So in a sense, you could, rescale all of the steps to work with that if you had to. If you raise, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, the perimeter, you have to remember too, just only showing on the side view is showing that the stone, there's a stone perimeter that runs around, and it's a very integral part of the porch. To raise it, it would raise that outside show board around the three sides a little larger.
It's just a question.
It might entail using larger floor joists than is existing now. Not wanting to open up too much of the floor already to take any strength away from it. And there are some issues. We have two openings coming into play. No, one door opening coming into play on the porch.
Right.
Be on the rear side, extreme left side. gentle as we could. It's-
Well, this is a Greek Doric column.
Mhm.
And, it's a shingle-style house. They kind of take stuff from places and put it all together. And, well, this one and a couple of them, the other ones on that block have the same thing. But the true Doric column doesn't have a base. And it has a capital just like this, but it never had a base. So, and I did some research on this house, and there's an old picture from, 1920s, and you can clearly see bases on it. So somebody put a base on this way back when. This is probably not original because it probably rotted and they put this in.
I believe it's not original.
So, all I was asking is, because this is a scale thing, and that's really why you're here. It's a scale of a column is what we're
Yes.
talking about. So
Yep.
if there's a way to raise it and not add the extra 1.5 inches, great. If not, I think this column actually could use a heavier,
Yeah. it
base
almost-
anyhow.
yes.
Yeah, it's a tapered, a beautiful
Yeah.
tapered column.
Because normally in a colonial column or something else, there's a plinth, which is the
Right.
square.
It's a square flat,
Then there's the base, which is a round.
turned base, yes.
And that's generally not used with this column, but you could do that. So, if you wanted to get a piece of structural PVC that had that detail on it and slide it in there, that's one option. But to keep it to what I can see, and this is a fuzzy picture, as long as you've got a base on it, you've sort of done it, I think,
I think so.
So, if you go the 1.5 inches, do you guys have any? He's got it offset, like the second layer is cut in
I
some.
was going to say, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like that detail right there?
What's existing now is a piece of 2x material. The porch floor itself is 2x material. The AZAC porch tongue and groove board is a 5/4 or 1.125 material. So we're already getting some issues right there. We want to try to eliminate any damage that we have to do or any.
Well, I guess
amount
my
of cut.
question is, do you want to have this thing corbel in, or should it just be a big, thick base that's the
That's
same?
not a problem.
You know what I mean?
So instead of the 2 layers,
Yeah,
what
instead
you're
of
saying.
having it sort of
Right, the layered
terrace
look.
in,
Yeah, I stepped it in deliberately.
You know what I mean?
To give it a little bit of a look. But
yeah. Okay. My preference, I think, would be just to make it a
I
big,
guess simple.
thick base.
That's not a problem either. That can be done in wood, and could be pressure treated, would carry the load. In PVC or in the AZAC materials, it would be a lot of buildup. I'd have to search that out a little bit and see something that would be structural enough to carry, because all these are carrying, they are all functional and carrying the
Right.
load, and it's considerable on this porch, so,
Yes.
yeah, it's considerable. But no,
Everything else looks
that's not a problem at all.
Everything else looks okay on the house, though?
We just investigated the porch when we noticed that, the folks noticed that, and they were a little concerned about it, so we
But
did support it.
I'm sorry, not the whole house, but the foundation work, all the stonework seems to be in.
The stonework exterior that we can see from the outside seems to be in good order. If
Okay.
it needed to have some more masonry work done on it, we would do that and keep it in the same mode and the same look, and if any pointing would match.
Okay.
But not opening up too much on the inside, you never quite know sometimes what's going on underneath. Any severity.
Does this porch have any way of venting?
It vented through the top because it was a non-tongue and groove, which you're right, would require.
So if you're gonna tongue and
I'm-
groove it, you should
I'm
probably
thinking-
do something.
Did you notice? No.
And that's not a Harb issue, but it's just a,
No,
while we're here issue.
Yeah, and I hear you. It's a good point. It probably was never vented when it was built.
Mhm.
Okay.
Would there be a great deal of buildup? There be a buildup of vapors because we have 4 seasons playing on the wood and playing on the porch structure itself and then playing on the AZAC. It's nice with the AZAC because the porch already has a good bit of fall to it. The water will move off speedily,
Oh,
so that won't
good.
be a real issue to it. Snows and things like that, that's a different story. That has to be swept off. Venting it
Well, that's,
would take so much away
we
from it.
don't need to talk about that
It
now.
would take so much away from the porch, it would,
No.
Well, you know, you could do something in the foundation, but I'm just, but anyhow, back to the column.
Yes, sir.
What do you guys think?
I was just gonna say, you know, I'm thrilled that you're keeping the columns and not enclosing the porch, and I can't tell you what a difference this makes.
They enjoy, Mr. and Mrs. Hawk enjoy their porch. They're out there probably 3 to 4 seasons they're out there. They enjoy that very much. They would not think of enclosing that, no ma'am.
Good, and that's wonderful. So doing whatever you can to, you know, repair and keep
Yes, ma'am.
healthy, I'm thrilled.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're doing it in a great way.
Thank you.
Yeah, my only point is, I went through the ordinance 3 times, and I cannot see why we're reviewing these plans. This is basically a repair.
That's administrative issue.
Is it?
Yes, we make the decision as a township. You hear our decisions.
All right.
I mean, you can fit it into the scale thing, but that's the only thing I could.
It's like replacing windows. We wouldn't get involved.
It's their call.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up to them.
All right, yeah,
I mean, it is a minor, really. It's pretty-
yeah.
But they're doing a great job, though.
I mean, I think you're doing a good job. I do think it's really a pretty minor issue, and if, but I think that these details are what make a nice house.
I think it will bring it
So-
into more historical compliance.
Yeah,
with this
because when
material.
I look at the pictures now, it really does look like that base is sort of jerry-rigged in there.
It's been replaced.
And the bases do get so much wear, you know, with the moisture
Yes, ma'am.
coming down anyway, so.
Yes, ma'am.
The only other thing you might want to do is look at the other houses closely and see if you can see any of the details that might still be there. And then just try to grab that, whatever you can. You know, if it's on the overhang of the deck, there's usually a little piece of trim, whatever that
We
is,
put a piece of
all that kind of stuff.
Roman G molding on there would fit right in with it. That material's all available in the AZAC spectrum. Yeah.
You know, Cam, I looked at those pillars at the bottom, and it's a classic case of you really don't know how far you're going to have to cut. Because some of them were, it's so obvious that somebody did a patch to try to mess, right above, in fact, right above the plinths that are there now. They did some patches with
Little
stuff.
putty
and-
work kind of thing.
Yeah, something. You know, they try to put the curves in and everything like that, but you really are not going to know until you get there. So you may wind up having a larger thing than that, just to comply with what you find.
Well, I think the process will be that you prop up everything temporarily, you pull the columns, find out what the meat is of them, and then you can kind of go from there.
Yep.
And you may end up having, I mean, do you have a 4-inch difference between the first floor and this, or is it less than that, or? I mean, if you have a little bit of room, if it's,
I hear you.
then you may have to adjust the height a little bit. I'm just whatever you can do to not make this thing, you know, that chunky,
Yeah,
you know?
because they're talking 3 inches if
3
you
inches
do.
is probably
Yeah,
as high as you want it.
I would not like to come past that.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, if it's holding itself up now, you probably have enough to somehow make it work. Even if
Yes,
you've got to
it's
build
just-
something inside.
It's just the age of things,
Yeah.
and it's got some age on it, and it's showing a lot of wear on that driveway side. That would be, as I'm looking at it now, would be my right-hand side. That's showing the worst wear. But shrubbery, the rain, as things are kept around it, that tends to keep it wet
true.
and dry, so we get dry rot, which takes its toll on those type of columns.
Looks like you got downspouts on each one too, which
I believe that's correct.
sometimes they tend to leak and give you,
Yeah.
put the water right where you don't want it.
Exactly. Yep.
So you may want to look at also trying to minimize that. You don't have a huge roof area, you might get away with 2 on either end, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I have to say. I mean,
anyone else have comments? And any public comments? Would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to to approve a certificate of appropriateness.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, good luck.
And any new business?
I would like to just make a little announcement. It doesn't really have to do with Harb, but I just wanted to announce that on Monday night, the Radnor Historical Society will be unveiling a historical marker program. And the purpose, it's a totally voluntary program. It doesn't have anything to do with Harb. The guidelines will be somewhat different. But if anyone is interested, please come to the meeting on Monday night or watch on TV, and we will tell you more about this historic marker program. It's going to be for all houses in Radnor that were built in 1945 or before, and they do not have to be in a historic district. So if you would like a bronze plaque for your house and the rehab meets the guidelines that we've established, then the application, we're trying to get the program up and running by November 1st.
And it's the Board of Commissioners meeting you're talking
Yes,
about?
it's at the Board of Commissioners meeting on Monday night.
Is this information on the Historical Society's
Yeah.
website? as
Yes,
well?
it will be as of Monday. We'll have information about it. We'll have the application, the guidelines, links to other websites about how to, helpful links on how to restore buildings or get information, technical information, and then what kind of information we will need to evaluate the house. So I think it'll be a great program, though, and it's totally voluntary. It does not have to do with the township, but we will be telling the township about it and letting them know what we're doing.
Great.
Good.
Any other new business? Or old business, for that matter? Okay, meeting adjourned.